Hey guys, this is ReggieTheGamer, and welcome back to another video. Today guys, I have a slightly different kind of video from my normal ones, and this being a top 10 of just my favorite games because I asked you guys in a community post if you were up to see my favorite games, or at least the top 10. And so, here we are with the top 10. And I'm gonna try to make this as interesting as possible, you know, because it is, at the end of the day, a list, but I still want to make it as cool as I possibly can. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So with our number 10 spot, we have Ghostrunner 2. The first Ghostrunner already felt really good to play through, and it seemed so cool, but Ghostrunner 2 just feels like everything got improvements from the first, and it even removed some parts from the first game that weren't super fun, like cybervoid puzzles, at least in my opinion. The levels are better, the music, at least at its best, is better, and the boss fights are way better. Now everything is fast-paced action, and I love it. There are even new abilities and some extra challenges to try throughout the game. The only thing is that in one part of the game, it kind of really drags on, and that part doesn't have great music, so it's kind of overall a little underwhelming, but I didn't mind it too much, especially since you can just skip a good chunk of it. The first Ghostrunner had a lot of really cool moments, and everything about it was great, but this does all of it better. Next up, coming in at the number 9 spot, we have Bayonetta 2. This game does everything the original Bayonetta did and more. It just takes everything from the first game and makes it better, and it's insane. The gameplay somehow feels more fluid than it did before. There are new, very interesting weapons, battles that are way bigger with some new and returning enemies, and to me, the music is the best in this series overall, even with some tracks that are remixed from the previous game for particular moments in the story. It has its own uniqueness while also expanding and connecting everything from Bayonetta 1. It's great, and what I would say is a perfect sequel. Next up, in the number 8 spot, we have ULTRAKILL. This game is wild. I want to start off with a little story about how I got into this game. One day I was going through the Steam store page, saw this game, and realized that it had a demo. And so, of course, I was going to give it a try. And somehow, I found my way into the first secret level, got too scared to play the rest, and decided this game was not for me. But I did, of course, eventually get back into it, and I'm so glad I did. In terms of gameplay and music, this is right up there with Doom. It's so well made for being put together by mostly one person. The more you play, the more insane it gets, and every time you think you've seen it all, even more crazy things happen. The amount of things you can pull off in this game, too, is insane. There are some crazy clips of people doing the most ridiculous weapon combos for damage that wouldn't be practical whatsoever, but I love seeing them. Some people would even argue this game is better than Doom, and honestly, I can see where they're coming from. But speaking of Doom, our number 7 spot is Doom Eternal. Doom Eternal has amazing gameplay, and a pretty decent story, even though it's only a little bit, unless you like to read. In that case, have fun with the codex entries. Everything from Doom 2016 is improved upon. All the guns were upgraded visually and with their mod changes. Old demons were redesigned and new ones were created to make fights even more tense. The flow of combat and the challenge in it were increased to 11, but it's still fair, since the Doomslayer also gets some upgrades to improve the already fun combat loop of Doom. such as the shoulder-mounted grenade launcher, the flame belch, the ice bomb. It's just all really good. Last but definitely not least, the music. Can't talk about Doom without mentioning the music because it hits harder than the Doom Slayer's fist. Mick Gordon and everyone else that worked on the soundtrack killed it, and I love every track in the game. They all fit the environments, and I've listened to it way too much. You can really feel everything that was put into Doom Eternal, and it shows. Coming in at number 6, we have Persona 5 Royal. It's an amazing game with a great story, characters, stylish UI, which everyone talks about, so I will avoid doing that for now. But there's so much other things compared to what the previous Persona games had done at the time. And with Persona 5 Royal specifically, not the base Persona 5, there's even more story that's arguably better than the end of base Persona 5. The only thing I have against it is the gameplay and how it can get a bit repetitive, mostly just with the life sim aspect. But it is made up for with the battles being able to be really fun and being able to use a lot of different tactics and techniques to take down enemies. Lastly, with it being a Persona game, it also has an amazing soundtrack to fit just about any scenario, and I love it. I've listened to the OST so much ever since I finished this game, and I still listen to it to this day. Now, getting into the top 5 games, we have none other than Minecraft. It's a game that almost everyone knows and loves. I've played it a lot longer than I'd like to admit, but it's for a very good reason. Just when you think there's nothing to do in the game, there's always something you can find. A new world to start in creative or survival, a new server to check out, add-ons or mods to try, challenges you can attempt. The list goes on, and if you play with friends, it gets even better. This game, honestly, isn't just a game. It's a platform for so many people, and it's made so many memories for so many people over the years. It's still going strong today, and it'll always hold a special place in all of our hearts. Next up in number 4 spot, we have Devil May Cry 5. This is a triple S game with some of the best graphics I've ever seen to date. I was amazed by it, and for my first game in the series, and even genre, it was a great introduction. Speaking of introductions, I think this also has one of the best introductions I've seen to a game. That opening cutscene is immaculate. Of course, the gameplay and music is really good too. But my only issue is that it felt a little bit short. It ended so abruptly and left me wanting more. However, that's also a great thing about it, because the game is so short, it makes you replay it so much more and get better at it, and the combat is so fun. It's just nice to go back and just pull off those super cool, crazy combos. Especially if you have Virgil. But moving on to the top 3 games, we now have NieR Replicant. This game, as soon as I started it, I knew I would like it, but I really love this game. Almost everything about it is perfect. The only part I wish was different was the way they decided to execute some of its storytelling. In particular, one part where there's just a ton of dialogue that you have to sit and read, which can take about 30 minutes. However, despite its lows, it has really high highs. This game has made me more emotional than anything I've played recently, and I love how well the story, characters, and music are all put together. Even the combat is really solid despite it not being too complicated or intricate. The gameplay itself is really simple, but it doesn't take away from the game. From start to finish, this game is an amazing experience. Next up in the number 2 spot, we have Persona 3 Reload. Everything Persona 3 did, Persona 3 Reload does better, and there's more. Of course, the story is amazing and the characters are great, with some that have even improved. The main dungeon of the game also got improvements, with more optional fights, an updated look, and some extra things to find throughout. Plus, there are some new aspects of combat that were added to spice some things up, and it's awesome. For instance, one of the things being the ability to shift between teammates for them to follow up on attacks, which was not in the original game, but it makes it so much better to get through. The soundtrack somehow got better as well. I mean, it's a Persona game, it's already really good, but the remixes of old tracks and the completely new tracks to go along with it, perfect. Overall, this game is now the way to experience Persona 3. Now, before we get into my number 1 game, I have an honorable mention, that being Metal Gear Rising: Revengence. This game is ridiculous. If you know, you know. But I love it. It has some of the coolest gameplay I've gone through and one of the craziest stories. The only thing I didn't like about it was a really hard difficulty spike at one of the boss fights, but after overcoming it, it felt so good, especially for that point in the story. I hadn't struggled with one part of a game for so long, but this game gave me an awesome challenge with awesome music. On top of that, it has a whole speech about memes. What's not to love? Anyway, the characters, specifically the bosses you fight, are really interesting too, being somewhat of a mirror to Raiden's aspects. But that aside, love the music, love the story, love the gameplay, and I just had to mention it despite it not having a spot in my top 10. Now, for our number 1 spot, we have NieR Automata. When I first got into this game, I was a little skeptical. I wasn't sure how any of it was going to work or how it would go. I'd only heard that it was good and that the OST was really good. And you know what? I heard correctly. This game seems so perfectly constructed on the pace a player wants to go and how far they are willing to go. It works for people who just want to play a fairly short game one time, even though that's not how you're supposed to play it. People who want to play the game for all of its side quests and secrets, and people who want something more. The game is nearly perfect. The setting, story, and the music are all great. The only thing that wasn't too great for me, at least with one character in particular, was combat, and it just felt a little weird sometimes with its combos. But other than that, it was just so good to go through. I loved going through this game, seeing all the different areas, and it was so worth it to see it all the way through to the end. The more you explore and the further you progress, especially if you get to the very end, you realize this is not just a game, but a whole experience that is like no other. And I cannot give it enough praise. Anyway, that wraps up my top 10 games. And since we're here, I'm curious to know what your guys' top 10 games are, or maybe even top 5, top 3, maybe even just favorite of all time. Leave them down in the comments below, because I am curious to see what you guys really like. But that's going to do it for this video. So if you guys did enjoy, go ahead and slap the like button, subscribe if you're new to the channel, because of the channel, and become part of the hashtag Lightning Nation. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.